up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the MLB Swing for the Fences show here on the Run Pure Sports YouTube channel. A little early, still drinking the coffee, waking up over here, and preparing for today's three-game early slate. We got a three-man booth for 3 games. That's pretty impressive. We just each talk about one game and get on out of here. But no, we'll break down each game thoroughly, and we're going to give you guys a special treat. Do a double slate show here. We'll do the main slate that starts at the normal time this afternoon. So 2 distinct slates. We'll talk about them both, obviously starting with the early games. Honored to be joined by the one and only JT Hayes and Mangone. We'll start with you, JT Hayes. How you doing on this Thursday morning?
I'm doing great. We had some tornadoes here in the Georgia area, none in at least my backyard, so that's nice. And I was at the Braves game last night, got to see Chris Sale dominate. Lovely bounce back series for the Bravos after getting absolutely demolished by the Dodgers out in LA. So excited for a split slate here, 2 3-game slates, very interesting options on both slates. Only that I see at least only one game with a little bit of weather, DC. So we're going to ask you to put on your meteorologist cap and talk us through what's going to go on in Southern Ohio today. But just so excited to join you guys on a little matinee, a little Thursday matinee with my friend Sweet Mangone, who is in a lovely mansion, it looks like, and just excited for the slates.
Yeah, I want to hear Mangone tickle the ivory with that grand piano back there in the left corner. He seems like a good musician. We got a good story on Mangone's dating life from the pre-show, but we're not going to talk about that here.
We're gonna
put it off limits, so that's as far as I'm going to go with it. Unless the chat really wants the details, and we can let Mangone decide if he wants to elaborate.
I do have a question, Travis. Was your lady friend playing the piano like Alicia Keys last night when you got back?
Yeah.
When you got back to the crib, did she serenade you with a little bit of a piano song, perhaps?
No serenading. I did miss the Knicks game, sadly, because of it, but that's okay. It sounds like I didn't miss too much. But
you must really like this girl if you're missing a sporting event, Mangone.
I don't know. I mean, honestly, I don't get out of the house much, so it was kind of nice to be able to get it. So that was good.
Do you still have your walking boot? Did you go on a date with a walking boot?
I was going to, and then I was like, I decided not to last second. Because I was playing basketball with it, literally before I was told I'm not allowed to run around on it anymore.
So you took off the walking boot before going on the date?
I did. I was considering wearing it, but I was like, that sounds like, I don't know. Last second call, I was like, that's a pussy move. Just walk.
So you're running around the basketball court in a walking boot?
No. I was playing on a broken talus. It was, right. I was doing things on it. So it's not I don't know. I was doing normal things. They just kind of told me you got to put it in a walking boot. And I wear this thing, JT. It looks like I should pull it up for you. It looks like an air monitor. It looks like a prisoner. I wear this thing.
Uh-huh.
I look like a prisoner. But it heals my ankle. I don't know.
It does look a little bit like an ankle bracelet. Interesting.
Yeah, I have to wear it a couple times a day for 3 hours, and it heals my ankle. So.
Listen, don't sell yourself short, by the way. You weren't just playing basketball. You were dominating. Didn't you dominate Snyder and Rubio on a broken leg? I mean, imagine, imagine being Rubio or Snyder right now. Snyder's mine. So is Rubio, too. I love those two guys. But imagine being them and knowing that not only did Mangone beat you, but he did it on one leg, literally.
I will say DC dominated me. And I don't know. I might want another shot at DC after realizing that my foot was basically broken while I was playing.
And now you have built an excuse.
But that's one reason I know I couldn't stop DC down low. I know he's bigger than me, but I literally physically couldn't stop him because my body couldn't handle it. He was just broken. So I don't know.
I put on that 40 pounds just so I could get in the pain against Mangone. Totally worth it for the rest of the year.
I mean, you are sneaky tall. I don't know. You're taller than I always realize. I don't know, how tall are you, DC? You're are you 6'1"?
6'1", yeah.
Yeah, you don't. I don't. For some reason, you don't look 6'1". It's just it's. And then when I was trying to get the boards, I was like, "This is getting tough." I mean, I'm only 5'8", so it's tough.
6'1" of pure muscle over here in DC land.
That's what I remember.
Well, I don't even have the advantage over like guys like JT who are not at altitude, right? I'm at an altitude battle. You and I are both superhumans over here living up here in Denver. So that's another thing I don't even have going my way.
Yeah, that's one way to put it. Superhuman. We'll go with that. JT, Chris Sale, your man, he looks fantastic for the Braves. We were talking about it yesterday on the show. Hopefully, some of you guys hit that ladder. We like the Chris Sale 10 plus Ks, which you got there. 10 Ks exactly. That was like plus 270 or so. So, yeah, I've been really, really impressed with him. One of those guys where I just kind of expect him to rack up the Ks every time out. Looks kind of unhittable up there, does Chris Sale. So that was fun to see. We'll see if he can stay healthy. But, yeah, for now, he's a guy that we're going to be, I think, want to be riding almost every start. Sale, one of those dudes for sure. Let's get into this 3-game slate. JT, you did mention the potential weather issues in Cincinnati. That is the first game we'll talk about. I do think this game should be fine. Looks like some weather, some rain, potentially on the horizon. But, yeah, I'm not worried about this game as of now. I was going to say we do have like 2 hours before lock on Cincinnati and Arizona, so we'll monitor it. But as of now, I'm going to proceed like this game should play, and hopefully it does, because we don't need this 3-game slate to go to a 2-game slate. I do think a lot of people will go to this game for bats and for pitching too. I guess on a 3-game slate, there's no real writing games off or avoiding anybody. You got to consider, I think, every stack and kind of, to some extent, every pitcher. There's one pitcher I won't be using on this slate, but I do think the other 5 outside of Cal Quantrill are in play. Hunter Green going here for the Cincinnati Reds. Obviously, big-time strikeout artist. He does have walk issues. He does usually have home run issues. He's actually not given up any home runs in 6 of his 7 starts this year, which is pretty wild for Hunter Green. He did give up 2 against Milwaukee, but in the other 6 starts, no home runs at all. I don't really expect that to hold up, but it is an interesting point here early in May. He is kind of a classic JT, Hunter Green, can use him on almost any slate with the strikeout upside. He's also oftentimes a good pitcher to stack against, at least historically, with the home runs given up. You can also steal bases against him. Obviously, the D-backs have some speed, especially with Corbin Carroll up at the top of that lineup. And then pitching for the D-backs is Slade Ciccone, who has actually looked okay so far. Somewhat surprisingly, the stuff looks decent to me. Throwing 84 to 85 pitches. He did get through 6 innings in his first 2 outings, and then San Diego got to him a little bit in that last start. But he's not bad, and there are certainly strikeouts to be had against this Reds lineup. So I do think both pitchers are interesting here, and obviously the Great American Ballpark, the best home run ballpark on most slates, including on this one, better home run ballpark than Coors Field, even though most people maybe don't realize that. But yeah, I do think you can play both sides of this one. I do like, of course, the red side for upside. My guy, Ellie De La Cruz, always going to be an elite play. And I do kind of like Corbin Carroll atop that lineup. I know 2 expensive bats there. I know he hasn't been great, but the power-speed combination against Hunter Green in this ballpark looks pretty nice to me. We'll throw it to you first, JT, Arizona and Cincinnati. What do you got for us here?
Yeah, it looks like Hunter Green is going to come in, at least projected, the 3rd highest owned pitcher here. And I may flip his ownership with a pitcher that we'll talk about later, just because of the fact that you mentioned we've seen right-handed pitching do well against Arizona, but we've also seen Arizona out of nowhere put up 13 runs. So I'm definitely going to have Green in my pool, but I also, like you, like the Arizona bats. And then I lean more on the side of Cincinnati than I do Slade Ciccone. I think he's, like you said, he's fine, but I also do think he's been a little bit lucky. Certainly that showed up in his last start against San Diego. But the one thing that I see here that I think is going to continue, and we saw this in last night's game, is Cincinnati will just run at will. I mean, they are forcing the other team to throw them out on the base pass, and it's not happening a lot. And I think that type of disruption for a young pitcher like Slade Ciccone, and then you get this Arizona bullpen, which hasn't been great all season long. I think Cincinnati's one of my favorite offenses on this small slate. So I'm going to have a lot less Slade Ciccone. He could be fine, to your point, and he could get you 10, 13 fantasy points. And maybe that's enough if you get enough offense out of your batters just based on what we see in terms of projections for the other pitchers on this slate. So the other thing that strikes me as something that I remember from seasons past is it doesn't look like it's going to rain heavily, but it looks like it's going to be humid. It looks like there's going to be a lot of moisture in the air. And that is a park where when that happens, balls tend to fly out more so than normally. So I'm keeping that in the back of my mind as well, in that this may be an even better offensive environment than Coors Field, with it being 50 degrees and the wind blowing in there today. So I think a lot of people are going to be doing that. San Francisco looks to be the most popular offense on the slate, but followed very closely by Arizona and Cincinnati.
Yeah, Ciccone, mentioned the speed element for the Reds, and rightfully so, given how often they run. He's actually been pretty tough to run on in the recent sample last year. He pitched essentially a full season of AAA baseball, started 27 games, only allowed 6 steals and had 6 caught stealings. Obviously, they're playing with the new stolen base rules too. And you typically see even more stolen bases at the minor league level. The catchers aren't as good at throwing people out, but the base stealers are, pretty much just as good as at the MLB level. So I do still think Elly De La Cruz will run. I think he just runs on everybody. It doesn't really matter. But I do think Ciccone has a chance, at least, to slow down the rest of the Reds running game. If people were looking to that for upside, might not be there. Obviously, never know for sure, but it would just be Elly De La Cruz that I would be kind of expecting to run here, at least against Ciccone. Obviously, probably about half this game will come against the bullpen anyway. I do think I like Ciccone a little bit more than you, JT. I probably wouldn't be going to him on a bigger slate, but 5-game slate. I am playing multiple lineups today. He's 7,100. He has pitched decently well. Stuff, like I said, stuff looks okay. And yeah, I think the matchup is fine too. I do think the Reds are probably the second highest upside team on this slate after the Giants offensively. So again, this game, as is a lot of the case, a lot of times in Great American Ballpark, Mangone, I think both pitchers and both backs are in play. I know that's kind of the wishy-washy answer, but if it's the true answer, I think it's kind of what we got to give. So, yeah, I'm on both sides of this game to some extent. I will have exposure to both pitchers, but I'm not excluding either stack. You have any individual hitters, or how high are you on these pitchers and stacks, Mango?
Yeah, it's a 3-game slate, so it's really hard to not to take fans, but it's hard to give just pure takes on this is the best spot. You do have to kind of get exposure to a lot of different things on these kind of slates. I do think one thing to kind of mention, the ownership is all going to be condensed on Gilbert, Lopez, and Green. So Slade Ciccone is going to be a pitcher that if you want to spend down, you could definitely get exposure to him. He's not a bad option at 7.1K, and he's probably the value pitcher that people will go to, because I doubt they're playing a pitcher in Coors as the value pitcher. Just think that's good information that we need to have on this slate. But I do agree with you guys. I think we got to consider these bats, and I'm sort of with JT on this. I think I'd rather take chances on Cincinnati, Arizona over Colorado, San Francisco, mainly because I think, and we talked about this a lot yesterday, we talked about offenses that we felt like DC were over-owned versus the field and what they think. And I think everyone's just going to see Coors Field and just play Coors Field like normal. Projections are going to push Coors Field like they always push Coors Field. And I want to be under on Coors Field and more over on Arizona, Cincinnati. I feel like that is going to be one of the bigger stands that I take when it comes to DFS today. Another thing that we can do in DFS is we can take strong fades. I think that's one thing as we get to one of these games coming up. I'll mention making a strong fade on certain plays can just separate you from the field. If a 50% or owned guy just isn't on the winner, well, you've already passed a ton of the field. So that's something that's just worth mentioning on a 3-game slate. But overall, I like Arizona, Cincinnati. We have to get some exposure to them. And if you do decide to play Cincinnati specifically, they have some expensive bats. They're the main team on the slate that has 2 guys that I think the most expensive guys. They have Elly De La Cruz. They have Spencer Steer. When you plug those guys in, it's a lot harder to capture those really expensive pitchers on the slate that people want to get to. So that might be a way to get different, is spend up for Spencer Steer and Ellie De La Cruz when you play the Reds, because that will give you a different type of roster construction. I'm sure there's a way to jam in both of those guys with some of the good pitchers up top, but I'm just stating how if you go grab both of those spend up options, it's going to force you a little bit to spend down at your pitcher so you can still get in good bats as well.
Good points there, and I do think it's worth bringing up the strategy element on a smaller 3-game slate like this one. In my opinion, the biggest adjustments to make are you do not need to stack nearly as much on smaller slates, in my opinion. For one, there's, with fewer teams in play, there is a less likelihood of one team kind of breaking the slate, putting up 10 plus runs. And two, to me, it kind of slides the emphasis away from stacks and more towards the individual upside plays, right? Like if someone hits, a home run and gets stolen base, gets 25 fantasy points, you're going to need to have them most likely on a 3-game slate, no matter what team they come from, because everybody's going to have a little bit of ownership. And like we said, unless one team goes completely crazy, which is less likely, it can be more or less a mix. So I don't think the field changes their approach all that much. You're still going to see most people try to play, 5-man stacks, 4 plus 4 on DraftKings, whatever it is. I think you need to focus on that much less on a 3-game slate like this one. So that's one adjustment I'm making. I mean, I'm not even opposed to playing, like a 2-2-3 or whatever it is. I think you can really, really open it up on a 3-game slate. Seems like both of you guys agree with that. Any general strategy thoughts, JT, on how to adjust to a smaller slate like this one?
Yeah, I mean, and I'll say this, and people are talking about a dead ball. I don't believe that there's a dead ball. I just think the weather in the early season, really the same thing we've seen last year. But even on main slates like last night, I think the flagship winner was a 2-2-2-1-1. So you're seeing that. And the other thing, DC, is the move towards analytics and the move towards more of these teams. I saw the Brewers do it yesterday during the day slate, which was wild to me because I didn't think of them as a pinch hitting team, of just swapping out lefty righty for matchups from the 5th inning on. We know that the Twins and the Rays have done this for several years now. You're seeing it harder for 5-man stacks to get there, not from all teams, because there are still some traditional teams like the Yankees, like the Braves, who really don't do it all that much. But on a 3-game slate, I think what I'm going to do is set a max of 4 per team, not force any particular stacks in. And I'm going to allow at least one hitter against my pitcher, and I'm going to see what it gives me. And once that first run is done, then I'm going to adjust from there based on what I think I'm getting. Because no matter what, right, we know this. Coors Field is on the slate. The projections are going to slant towards, at least in this case, San Francisco. They're much lower on Colorado this season. So you're going to have to do some work with the Optum when you're running this, because otherwise you're going to get a heavy dose of what I had last night in my first run, which was Thairo Estrada, who got a solid 2 points as the highest owned player on my teams. I don't want the Giants guys to be my highest owned players today. I'll have some of them, even though it's Cal Quantrill, just because the Giants offense is pretty crappy on its own. So max of 4 batters per team, allowing at least one hitter against my pitcher, seeing what that gives me, and then adjusting from there.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And I certainly think you can allow at least one hitter against your pitcher, especially if you're using guys like Corbin Carroll, Ellie De La Cruz, who, can steal bases and kind of get there without the help of their teammates. So good stuff there. That's Arizona and Cincinnati. Fun first game to kick off this slate. Let's go over to the Minnesota Twins, Seattle Mariners. The Twins continue to play good baseball. They've got potential pitchers duel on our hand here. 6.5 over under Pablo Lopez versus Logan Gilbert. 2 guys who are excellent pitchers, 2 of the best pitchers in the league, frankly. Lopez has maybe been, I guess you could say, a little disappointing, a little underwhelming so far this year, at least kind of with the ERA and fantasy production, but he's still been very good. I would expect him to be even better going forward. And then Logan Gilbert, man, he has been on fire all year. This year, and as usual, he's not quite as good away from Mariners Park, but still a very good pitcher. I personally lean the Pablo Lopez side of this one. I do think it looks like the field is going to lean that way too. Seeing Lopez between 60 and 65% owned on this 3-game slate. Logan Gilbert, at least Sabres got him down near 40. So with that split in ownership, I do think it's pretty close between the two. Certainly with Gilbert more expensive than Lopez, you understand why maybe the ownership leans Lopez, who is a slight favorite, over Gilbert in this game. It's hard not to like both pitchers here, JT. I do tend to lean Lopez even with the ownership gap, but I could totally understand the case going the different direction. It's hard not to expect both these guys to pitch well. I just lean slightly with the home team, with the team that's on they lost the one game, but have won like 15 of the last 16, something like that for the Minnesota Twins. So that's my lean on this game, mostly going to pitching. But yeah, if you want to pick out, individual bats in this game, I think would be the best approach. Like we said, maybe allow the one hitter against your pitcher, maybe some of the power bats, maybe the catcher Camporeale hitting third against Lopez, or a Trevor Larnach who's shown power recently. Guys like that, I think, are in play, even if you're using these pitchers. Your thoughts, JT, on Mariners and Twins?
Yeah, I'm definitely not talking about a guy like Manuel Margot as the one hitter against my pitcher, or Austin Martin in the 9-hole. But what I'll say as far as this matchup, right, it is scary to see a pitcher on a 3-game slate with 70% ownership. But you look at what this Seattle team has been doing, and I mean, even though they scored a bunch of runs the other night, Bailey Ober got his 18-19 fantasy points. Pablo Lopez, of course, a much better pitcher here. And what I'll say about Logan Gilbert is 5-6 very, very good games in a row, but a 183 average on batted balls in play and 94% of runners left on base for Logan Gilbert so far this season. Those numbers aren't going to stay there, DC, right? Do those numbers go much lower today? I will have much more Twins in my lineups than I will Seattle Mariners. But from the other side of this is you look at what leverage is available on this slate. Well, what better leverage than playing some 4-man Seattle stacks against a 70% owned pitcher? I, like you, lean today with the projections and following that Pablo Lopez ownership. I just couldn't do it last night with Paddock. I only ended up with about 18-19% of him, and it didn't work out because Seattle's been that bad. And you look at the bottom of this Seattle lineup, and it's just nothing to get excited about. They seem to be right now, for the most part, they're either going to hit a home run or they're going to strike out. There's really very little in between with these Seattle teams. So I'll allow a Cal Raleigh or a Haniger against, or maybe even a Polanco against Lopez in those lineups. But I'm going to side with Lopez. I'm going to side more with the Twins in this environment. They did put out a lineup, too, of the Twins, because they are one of these teams that we really worry about pinch hitting. They do have a couple of their right-handers that are normally not in the lineup against the righty, so it is maybe somewhat mildly safer to play some of these guys than it ordinarily would be.
Yeah, kind of weird. Kirilloff is in there. Guys like Martin and Margot are. So, yeah, hard to know what they'll do with the pinch hitting stuff. I will say Seattle, just a couple lefties in the pen. Neither of whom are very good, and one of them pitched yesterday. So guys like Julian Larnach, they're not safe from being pinch hit for here, but I mean, especially with like Margot and Martin in the lineup, right? Those are the guys that would potentially come in for them. Right. I don't think you're going to pinch hit like a left for left situation. So I'll look into that a little bit more.
I think is the one guy that maybe comes in for a Larnach or Julian, but I think, like you said, never safe, a little bit more safe today.
Yeah, 100% agree there. Mangone, I mean, we've seen Woods Richardson was the play of the day on Monday, I believe. Then Ober was solid on Tuesday. And then yesterday, what Paddock put up, 30 fantasy points against this team. I mean, Lopez, clearly the best pitcher among those four. It doesn't mean he's necessarily going to have the best game, but you have to like this matchup at home for Pablo Lopez. Pretty good pitching environment. We know how good he is just in general. So, yeah, he's my SP1 today. I'm kind of with JT. I would prefer to go to the Twins bats over the Seattle bats. But, yeah, if you want to get contrarian, trying to win a GPP, Seattle, obviously, if they put up a decent game, could get you there. Where do you stand on this one, Mango?
Yeah, I think we disagree there, where if I picked, I would just take the Seattle bats. I know they've been horrible, but I just think the ownership on Lopez is so high. Yes, Gilbert's will be high too, but I just think leverage-wise, I would do that. But I'm not racing to do it, and I don't even know if I am. But that's my thought on that. I agree. Like, I think I'm just going to eat some of the Pablo Lopez chalk, but I talked about it before. Very easy ways to get different is if you think Pablo Lopez is like 75% owned today, well, let's say Pablo Lopez puts up an 8 DK point performance. There's a good chance he's not on the winner with that performance, where that'll bury the entire field, right? Or not the entire field, 3/4 of the field, right? So I think you can make a case for, if you fade Pablo Lopez, you can eat a lot of chalk that way. I think my decision is going to be to play him rather than fade him. And I think the game coming up that we're going to talk about is going to be a lot lower on than the field. I like the idea of eating the Lopez and, Gilbert chalk. I kind of think Gilbert's a better play than Lopez. I know he's priced up more, but I just think at the ownership, like if you told me I had to fade one, I'm going to fade Lopez over Gilbert just because I think everyone is going to plug in Lopez. He's got a better projection. He's cheaper. I just think that's how a lot of people are going to handle Pablo Lopez. So for me, I want to be more overweight on Gilbert than Lopez if I had to pick one or the other. And then bats-wise, it's really tough. Like, I don't want to get a lot of these guys. I'm not looking to get a ton of stacks. But I think you can play one-offs. Like, I don't think that's the worst idea. Like, could Julio Rodriguez get a home run against Pablo Lopez? Sure, that could certainly happen. Could a Trevor Larnach get a hold of one against Logan Gilbert? Yeah, of course that can happen. So I would more so look to do that. And to the strategy point that we talked a little bit about earlier, like, this is where I'm looking for those one-off possibilities. This is where I'd allow one batter to go onto my teams that's against my pitcher if I want to. And I want to build more 4-3-1s or 4-4s on this slate, just because I think a lot of people, they force themselves into 5-mans. And when you force yourself into a lot of 5-mans, it kind of puts some constraints on what you can do when you don't have as many options on like an 8-game slate or a 10-game slate. So I'm going to focus on some 4-3-1s and some 4-4s on this slate. And hey, if I get like the 3-3s, like you were talking about, like 3-3-2s in DC, all those different ones, I don't mind those as well. But I think it's a good thing if you're using an optimizer, just run all the different combinations. Like, look at them. If you're using SaberSim, look at what your 3-mans look like. You might be surprised that there might be teams that look better than you think because of the constructions. You may not have created that when you would hand build your lineups.
Yeah, Lopez, Gilbert, both very good pitchers. They both do have league average home run rates given up, though. Not like these guys are guaranteed to keep the ball in the yard. So, yeah, I think the home run hitters on each side is what I'm looking at for the most part, just because I'll be surprised if we get like a big rallies out of Minnesota or the Mariners, given how good the pitchers are. But I wouldn't be surprised if each pitcher gave up a home run or two. Last thing I'll mention, I think importantly, Minnesota bullpen, which is very, very good, will be depleted this game. I think their closer, who's one of the very, very best pitchers in baseball, Juan Duran, is going to be unavailable. He's pitched 2 of the last 3 days, including yesterday. Griffin Jacks, who's, again, probably a top 10, 15 reliever in all of baseball, pitched 2 of the last 3, including 26 pitches yesterday. I know how cautious the Twins are. I bet he's unavailable. And their third best reliever, Caleb Thielbar, also pitched 2 of the last 3. And then Brock Stewart, who is he's incredible. He's on the IL currently. So this Twins bullpen is about as depleted as you could hope for. We should get lefty Cody Funderburk, I think, is going to have to pitch. If Lopez can only make it 6, might get a couple innings out of him. So maybe a little bit better matchup for some of these Mariners bats than it would initially appear. But yeah, obviously multiple ways to approach this one. My favorite is to get exposure to these pitchers, but also take the power bats from each side on a few lineups. All right, let's get to the last game on this slate. It is Coors Field. It is Colorado and the San Francisco Giants. 9.5 total here. lower than it might otherwise be just because of the weather here in Denver. Not great for hitting. 50 degrees, winds blowing in. It's still hitter's park in Colorado. It kind of always is, even with crappy weather like this, but not the same as an 80-degree day with the winds blowing out in Coors. So I do think these pitchers have more chance for success than maybe most people expect. I can't get behind Cal Quantrill with the low strikeout rate. Just not a good match for Coors Field. He hasn't been as bad as I expected this year, but I still do like the Giants. Going to put the ball in play and good things happen in Coors when you do that. And then Keaton Winn, been pretty good for the most part for San Francisco outside of a disaster start last time out against Philadelphia in Philly. They can kind of do that to any team, but he didn't get through an inning in that one. 5 earned runs, no strikeouts, only 39 pitches. So yeah, I think Keaton Winn could bounce back here. I don't think he's a crazy play at all at 6K. Obviously, the Giants are going to be super chalky. JT, where do you stand on Coors Field today?
Yeah, I'll probably be slightly under the field. I'm seeing almost 30% ownership on these Giants bats. And the Giants are a team, too, that will mix and match depending on what's going on. It looks like there are 2 lefty relievers in the Rockies bullpen. They did not use either of them yesterday. I think the one guy, Jalen Beats, is the setup guy. The other lefty reliever was likely down yesterday. He's probably available today. So you got to be a little bit careful with the Giants here and pinch hitting. And for that reason, I'll be lower on the Giants. I think they're still in a good spot here against Cal Quantrill. Quantrill coming off like the game of his life against the Pittsburgh Pirates. I think it was 37 fantasy points. Definitely do not expect to see a repeat of that performance. But the guy who is interesting is Keaton Winn. Keaton Winn so far, as it relates to this slate, just numerically, xFIP, different numbers, expected ERA, he falls in range of the 3rd or 4th best pitcher on the slate. He's 6K. He's got a good strikeout prop. We have seen pitchers in Coors do well just because of how bad this Rockies team is. And so I like Keaton Winn a lot, and I think he's probably going to be my second highest owned pitcher after Pablo Lopez on this slate. So that's kind of where I'm looking at in terms of the Coors Field game.
Yeah, ownership-wise, I think we'll see Lopez definitely lead the way. I think SP2 will be close between Green and Gilbert. And then I think it'll be close between Keaton Winn and Ciccone, both maybe coming in around 20% ownership. Quantrill's the one that I won't play, looking like he might be 5 to 10% owned. Even that is too high for me. I know he's coming off that amazing game. Probably the best start that Quantrill will have the rest of his career. So I'm not going to chase that. What about you, Mangon? San Francisco, Colorado here.
Yeah, like I said earlier, I want to be higher, I think, on that Reds game than this game. Not that I won't have exposure to it. Obviously, the side that I think I'll like the most is the Giants side. Do we have the starting lineups? I guess let's look at that. I don't think we have.
I don't believe we do because this is a late. We got a big delay here between 110 and 310 when the Giants Rockies start.
Yeah, so obviously we got to be watching for that. I am curious because I do think the Giants have the ability to put out a really bad lineup. Like I think if they sit enough guys and with Jorge Soler on the IL, I do think that lineup could get bad. So I have been dabbling in the idea of playing Winn and Quantrill on the slate together. Is that bad of an idea today, JT? I think it's not crazy, but I think it's not. I don't think it's the right. I just thought about it a little bit.
I don't know that. I don't know that there's enough. I don't know that there's enough bats to spend for. That's
the problem. Yeah.
I mean, so there are, right? But let's talk about the probability that all of those 4, 8 to 6K bats actually get 15 to 20 fantasy points. I just look. It's a 3-game slate. You said it, right? You could try different things. Yeah. I will not. I don't know that I'm fading Quantrill. I may leave him as 5% and just see if I get any. I probably won't because his projection most places is under 10. So, I don't know that I'm going to – I don't think I'll have a lineup that rosters both of those guys, though.
No, we could stack the pitchers here, Winn and Quantrill, and head down to Coors Field. We can probably sit behind home plate today for like $4. Could be. Could
You
be
probably could sit behind home plate today for literally $4. No one's got to be going to this game, and it might rain. So, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I thought it was worth like considering. I don't know, did you even look at that route? I just thought it was something like it's a 3-game slate, right? Like I do these night playbooks all the time, so I always have to look at these crazy combinations. And like the other day, I forget what the pitchers were, but I was like, you have to play Walker Buehler. Like there's no way he's not the highest scoring pitcher on the slate. And then he got 6 DK points and he wasn't on the winner. So I try to like really think outside the box. Is this an idea we could even consider, DC?
So what would you do in that circumstance? You're going to stack up Great American Ballpark?
Yeah.
Yeah, probably. Like I just plugged it in. So I plugged in Wynn and Quantrill. We got Ellie De La Cruz and Spencer Steer. So now I'm at 4,500 for my I don't know, last 6 or 8 spots. You'd probably plug in a Christian Walker, a Kettle Marte. I mean, I got 2 Reds and 2 Diamondbacks so far that are expensive. I haven't even put Corbin Carroll in there. I mean, so here's the core, right? Wynn, Quantrill, Walker, Kettle Marte, Ellie De La Cruz, Spencer Steer, and Corbin Carroll. And I'm left with a catcher, a third base, and outfielder for 4,100. It's not the craziest idea. I think it can work.
So you could do Jeffers. You could do Fraley, right?
Yeah, you could do Miranda. There's a lot of guys you could do.
What I would say about that strategy in general, including today, is you got to be able to spend the salary on hitters who you actually kind of like, right? To flip the bill and get something that nobody else has. I do think you could do it today. I think there's enough expensive bats, obviously led by, at least for my eyes, Corbin Carroll and Ellie De La Cruz, which obviously take up a huge chunk of salary. So, yeah, not the worst idea. Again, 3-game slate. I think just about anything can work. So, I can't do it with Quantrill, but stranger things have happened.
Well,
That's
the one thing I'll say about Quantrill that and DC, maybe you're better at this stuff, like all the pitching stuff. I was kind of reading about it, and apparently his splitter's been really good lately, and
Stop it. Stop it.
I'm trying to make the devil's advocate. I'm trying to figure it out. His ground ball rate has gone up. The fly ball rate has gone down. We understand that when pitchers move to Coors Field, they try to teach them how to not throw as many fly balls. Like, I don't know. I mean, we've seen some crazy stuff, and it's just a 3-game slate. And again, I do these night playbooks every single night, so I always have to look at these crazy ideas. So it's just a crazy idea I'm considering.
So the idea is not where I'm saying stop it. Where I'm saying stop it is trying to talk yourself into the fact that Cal Quantrill is a good pitcher or an improved pitcher. Or because he went to the Rockies organization, they're going to teach him how to be a better pitcher. Stop with that nonsense, all right? That is crazy talk. Now, what's not crazy talk is, and I'll run a couple of these lineups with you. I'm gonna join in on the Mango and Fun. I'm gonna run a couple of Quantrill win lineups and stack up Great American Ballpark, and we'll see what happens. Just don't tell me that Cal Quantrill is all of a sudden.
Well, I'm asking the question. DC knows this stuff better than me. He's digging into the analytics. I am not digging into the analytics, so I'm asking the question.
Yeah, I do. Quantrill has been better this year than I expected him to be in Coors Field, but I'm just not buying it. He went from like the smartest pitching organization in Cleveland to the stupidest organization in MLB for the Rockies. So I'm not buying that they like fixed Quantrill or anything like that.
Right.
Yeah. Also, Steven, it's hard to make the argument because Pittsburgh is just so bad. Like, it's hard to be like, they're just. That
was in a streak of where I think the Pirates didn't score more than 1 run a game in like a week and a half. So It's
been a rough stretch for Pittsburgh, so it's hard to make the argument. Like, I think JT could go out there and get like 9 strikeouts right now.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but I mean, but I'll definitely join you in. It's not going to be in my core, but I'll join you in a couple of Win Quantrill lineups, and we'll see what happens.
It will not be in my core either. My core will likely be Great American Ballpark with like one of Gilbert or Lopez and maybe both. So it's more so. I'm just going to be super under on this on the bats and cores. I'm sure I'll have exposure to them. It'll likely be more one-offs or mini stacks of this game, but I want to be higher on Great American Ballpark and lower on Coors Field today. That's kind of my route.
Yeah. Let's do the stacks, pitchers, home run calls. I know it's a short slate, but let's just do our favorite stack. That can be a contrarian stack, whatever you want. We'll open it up on this shorter slate. Favorite stack for me, I'm going to go with the Diamondbacks against Hunter Green. I know he's got big upside. He also gives up home runs, gives up steals, and I think the Diamondbacks squad could potentially do some damage. And we'll be a little bit under-owned, I think, on this slate. So I'll go D-backs as my favorite stack. Over to you, JT, for your favorite stack today.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Reds. I think that I'm not as high on Ciccone as you are. I think the way his numbers look, I think he still has a little bit more regression to come back to where his skill level is. And I like the environment here for the Reds.
All right, man, go on your favorite stack today.
Yeah, my favorite stack will be the Reds. The reason I like the Reds, they have a lot of expensive guys, so it can help kind of flip some builds and, get you some unique lineups then in the field. So, and it's one of those things when you use an optimizer, like you might get the Reds, and a lot of the time, like I've played the Yankees a ton this year, and every time I play the Yankees, it's very hard to find a Juan Soto and Aaron Judge build because it doesn't want to push that in there because it's so expensive. So when you use an optimizer, make sure you're getting some Spencer Steer and Ellie De La Cruz teams because it might not push them as much as you'd think. So be on the lookout for that when you're kind of building your teams. But I'm going to be all in on the Reds. And JT, I have a question for you. You got to play Cal Quantrill or Slade Ciccone. Who would you be playing today?
I'll answer that question because my most important pitcher on the day is Mr. Ciccone, who I'm going to have more. I'll have plenty of red stacks too, plenty of reds, specifically Ellie. But I do think Ciccone's got some strikeout upside here. So, yeah, my most important pitcher will be him. I'll be pairing him up with Pablo Lopez on a bunch of teams. JT, I know your most important pitcher isn't Ciccone, so you can answer Mangone's question if you want to.
Yeah, I'm high on the Reds, so I'll take the $1,900 discount and play Quantrill, as disgusting as that sounds. I will have some Ciccone, but my most important pitcher, it's got to be Keaton Winn. So Keaton Winn, 6K. He's got a nice strikeout prop that I like, so I'm going to go with Keaton Winn today.
I would pay listen, if JT was pitching at Coors Field today, I would absolutely be there behind home plate. I put in there my K prop would be a half, and at Coors Field it may be I may not even have a K prop. They may not even want to waste the money. I think that's honestly what it would be, and I'd be putting some cheese down on the over and going to sweat JT if I could bet that. That would be a highly enjoyable afternoon watching JT give up 17 runs, but try to get
for you.
Also depends on which team he's facing.
That's true.
Yeah,
that's true.
Mangone, your most important pitcher on this slate.
Logan Gilbert for me. I want to be very well overweight on him. I think he's going to own the Twins, and I just looked. We can sit behind home plate for $23, DC. As cheap as that. So there's if you want to get to the game, even if you go a little bit over, you can get it for $13. So it is very just less than joining a DraftKings contest. So
you just buy the cheapest seats anywhere you want, and then just move right down to home plate today because there's going to be nobody in Coors Field. I would do it. The problem is, you spend the $7 on a ticket, and then but the beers are still $20. So those add up much quicker than the ticket price. Which, if you're sitting at Coors Field in 45-degree weather, you're gonna need something to warm you up. So wouldn't be as cheap as we might anticipate.
Yeah, you are right. It is gonna be a little cold. I wasn't thinking about that fact. I'm cold in my own house right now.
But you have your boot. You can wear your boot. I mean, that's a little bit of warmth. I mean,
I could get the scooter out. I could scooter my way in. We could use we could use the elevator, go up the elevator and everything, it would be good times, but it's probably too cold.
Beer stays cold, but the beers aren't quite as enjoyable when you're wearing a winter coat and freezing your ass off. So
now when your nose feels like it's going to fall off.
Yeah, probably not going to happen today.
Especially when DC is probably stacking cores and I'm going to be playing both the pitchers out of nowhere, and then I'm rooting on no runs and he's rooting on runs. It would be hilarious.
So it'll be a mismatched cheering episode.
Yeah, but so for me, it's Logan Gilbert. That's going to be my guy.
All right. Home run call. I'll go first. I'm grabbing Mr. Trevor Larnach, swinging for some power for the Twins. JT, your home run call today.
Edouard Julien is going to lead off the game with a home run against Logan Gilbert.
I like it. Mangone, our 2 home run guys are donging off your favorite pitcher, so I'm sorry about that, but you have a home run call for us.
Yeah.
Apologies.
That's okay. No worries. I'll go with Jake Fraley. We'll go with him as my home run call. He's going to hit his, I believe, second home run of the season. He's only got 1, but the second one's coming today.
Who at DC? Right. Who was your guy? Was it Larnach?
Larnach. Yeah.
Okay, we got a Minnesota homer here. I mean, anything Minnesota, DC is going to just be, rooting for. So I understand.
Ride the wave. Favorite overall bat on this slate? I'm going with Mr. Corbin Carroll. I know it's been a very tough start to the season for him, but has shown some signs of life recently. Love this running matchup for him at the leadoff spot. Should get 5 plate appearances in this game. I think Carroll has no hitter has the floor, but I do think he's going to do at least a little bit of damage, and I do think the upside is pretty massive for Mr. Carroll. JT, your favorite overall hitter on the slate?
I'll go in the same game. I'll go with TJ Friedel.
All right, there we go. We'll go top of the order combination, Friedel and Carroll. And going your favorite hitter on the slate.
I'm going with Mr. De La Cruz. I know he's the most expensive guy, but I don't care. I'm going to find ways to get him on my teams, and he's going to get the job done for me today. So, and the good news is there's a 2-hour buffer between these games. Maybe if my red stack is just absolutely booming, then I'll just snap call and buy some tickets and go watch the Coors game if it works.
There you go.
If you're going down, man, go and send me a text. I'll join you. But
I'll let you know. I do have to do the after or the night playbook, so that's part of my schedule. If it wasn't, it'd be an easier call. But maybe I'll have to. If I see the Reds off to like 5 runs in the first inning, I'll have to get started on that slate.
Yeah, just do it now.
Go watch your pitchers get -12 in Coors Field. That'll be a good use of your afternoon. That's the 3-game slate. I guess we have 10 minutes here to jump over to the night games, see if there's anything that really stands out. We're not going to go in depth on these games. It is Cleveland, White Sox, St. Louis, Milwaukee, KC, and LA. Pitching-wise, I mean, hard to avoid Sonny Gray there, but I do think it's a decent pitching slate. I think you could even go cheap here with a lively Michael Wacha combination. I'm probably not going to use Fetty against all those Cleveland lefties. So it would be Gray, Detmers, Lively, and Wacha, the 4 pitchers I'd consider. And then assuming the weather looks decent, decent in Chicago. I kind of like that Guardians contrarian lefty stack at the top of the lineup against Mr. Eric Fetty. Personally, JT, just quickly kind of thoughts on the 3-game night slate tonight.
Yeah, I think, Sonny Gray at 10-8, right? I mean, he's been fantastic. There's nothing in the numbers here that would suggest that he's not going to continue. I mean, great strikeout rate, very low walk rate, very low expected ERA. There's a lot of swing and miss here in this Milwaukee lineup. He is going to be 50% owned. So, again, same situation where you can play some Milwaukee teams against them just to kind of get some leverage, but I don't love it. I like your call. I think Eric Fetty's certainly been pitching way, way over his head. And when you look at this night game, I mean, I like Reed Detmers a bit here. I know that Kansas City's been pretty good, but I like Detmers in a little bit of a bounce back spot. It's really hard to love anything about this Angels team. They traded this morning for Luis Guillorme, which is not the least bit exciting. So, looks like, they're going to continue. Although as bad as the lineup has been, they keep scoring runs. Joe Adell has been hitting the ball very well. So I think if I'm looking for offenses, it's probably, and it's hard to play St. Louis too, right? I mean, Tobias Myers is a bad pitcher, but Cleveland, I think you're right, DC, is probably the place where I would look first, especially given the state of the White Sox bullpen.
Yeah, absolutely. Mangone, any quick thoughts here on the night slate? We did get the Rockies lineup. It looks like about as expected, so pretty bad. They don't really have a good lineup to put out there. Just it's tough, but you don't have very many good hitters. But Mangone, any thoughts here on the later slate?
Yeah, that's definitely not a great lineup for sure today. But so it is interesting that like Sonny Gray is going against this Brewers team. That this Brewers team like literally is just mashing everyone. It always feels like, at least every day. Again, Sonny Gray's been so good. It's definitely tough. It's a good pitching slate. I agree with what you guys said. Like for being a 3-gamer, there's a lot of options if you want to go cheap and go get. The question though is like, are there any expensive bats that we want to go up and get? I think that's the big debate. I guess obviously Bobby Witt Jr. is on the slate. You got Jose Ramirez against Fedde. I know Fedde's been pretty good. I guess those Royals kind of do have some expensive bats. Sure, they have values you can mix out, but do I want to attack Reed Detmers? That's the other interesting thing. Like, I don't know. There's not a lot of bats that I'm really in love with because, like, you talk about Tobias Myers, but, like, I never want to be racing to play the Cardinals. They're not a team that I'm excited to play either. So one of the tough debates is, like, sure, you have these cheap pitchers that we just discussed, but what bats do you want to go spend on? Like, I think you can make a case for almost any pitcher. And I know Fedde, yes, I agree with what you guys kind of said. Do I want to attack these Cleveland lefties? No, but I will say I think Fedde's better than what he's been, and he had a down performance. I don't mind buying again on him. Maybe I'll just wait one more start to buy the next time. But I don't know. I know I gave a wishy-washy answer overall, but like, what bats do we like? Are there any bats you guys like really like on this slate? Because for me, I don't see a lot that I like. That's the real problem.
Well, we both like Cleveland.
Yeah.
What?
We're on Cleveland a little bit against Fedde, but yeah, I mean,
okay.
It's not obviously a great hitting slate.
Yeah,
they do have the highest total at 4.4.
That's definitely one of the tougher things for me. Is like I'm going to struggle to find bats I like on this slate. That's not that I love the pitchers. Like I think there's some really good pitchers, but it's not like you have like Logan Gilbert, Pablo. It's not like it's just like three. It's not like it's 6 like absolute aces on the mound in 3 games. But I don't know. I think for me, the Kansas City Royals, maybe I'll take chances on Detmers. I know Detmers has regressed a little bit, and I think the Royals will be the team that I guess I probably target in on the most.
Makes sense to me. That's the shorter 3-game slate tomorrow. Of course, the 3-game early slate starting up in about an hour here. Weather in Cincinnati still looks pretty good to me, so I'm going to be most likely just kind of proceeding as planned, especially with the hitting in that game. Don't think it'll be an issue in the end. We do appreciate all you guys watching. Hit the like button on your way out if you haven't yet done so. And this show will be back normal time tomorrow with a big Friday night slate. I think it'll be me, Boyden, and Stats breaking it down for you guys. Appreciate you watching. As always, for JT, for Mangone, I'm DC. We're out of here.